Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our August 3rd Thursday presentation. And happy summer, happy clear skies summer. Get the word out. This is the best possible year to visit BC wine country because it's beautiful and the tasting rooms are able to welcome you. So yeah, everybody get the word out. Today we have Dr. Mehdi Sharifi presenting. Dr. Sharifi is a distinguished research scientist specializing in soil nutrient management at the Summerland Research and Development Center in Summerland. Prior to his current role, Dr. Sharifi served as a professor at Trent University and Dalhousie University. He has completed 2 postdoctoral fellowships in 2005 and 2008, respectively. Dr. Sharifi has made significant contributions to his field through numerous peer-reviewed scientific journal publications and presentations at national and international conferences. His research focuses on enhancing the environmental sustainability and resilience of agricultural systems through the selection, modeling, and management of cover crops, as well as researching novel approaches to integrated soil nutrient management. Additionally, Dr. Sharifi is deeply involved in indigenous food systems research, contributing to the propagation and ethnoagronomy of culturally significant food plant species. And today, he's going to talk to us about developing a cover crop decision-making tool for Okanagan Valley vineyards. So welcome, Mehdi.
Right. Thanks so much, Kathy, and thanks to the BC Wine Grape Council for hosting this presentation. The title of presentation is Towards Developing Cover Crop Decision-Making Tools for Okanagan Valley Vineyards. This is a collaboration between our team in Canada and the modeling and the website developing team at SCAP at Toronto. My co-authors or collaborator Yash, Abbas, and Matthew from SCAP. These days we see that a lot of attention to the cover crop, but also on the selection tools or web-based selection tools, as well as the apps for getting information on cover crops and getting the best selection of the cover crops for the farms. So in this presentation, I'm trying to kind of review the available tools that you can access or growers can access. And then I'm going to explore the deficiency of these different tools. And then I'm going to explain what we are in the process of doing and planning to do through the new cover crop selection or new cover crop screening project that approved last year. And we received funding. And as one of the objectives, the 5th objective of this project, we are moving towards developing these decision-making tool for the vineyards in Okanagan Valley. So first, I'm gonna go through some of these web-based tools and look at those and see which kind of information these tools provide for us. I have example of 3 tools that they really visually appealing, and they did a good job in creating that web-based tool and providing the information. So one of the newest one and really good looking, because they spend a lot of money on that, is the perennial tool. And they call it, and you can access that through this link, is called farmdatatool.ca. And when you enter this tool, and you know perennial is located in Nova Scotia, then it provides like 4 main kind of tabs here. One is the pump light, which is a warning tool for the fire blight for the orchards. And then they have farm weather, that is all these different stations that they have across Nova Scotia. They have the weather data and very up-to-date weather data. So it's a GIS layer that you can click on that for your location, and then you can get the live weather data. And then you have soil series information, another GIS layer. Again, it gives you the information about your soil. What's the texture of your soil? What is the drainage, and all these different information, organic matter, and so on. So some information about the soil, and then eventually, then we get on the cover crop selection. So you have a cover crop tool. So really beautiful. I would strongly recommend that you go to that website and quickly try it. You need to create an account. It doesn't take much long. So you just enter your email and a password, and then you have access to this tool. And then take a look at that and see. It's really interesting. When I first saw that, I thought, okay, oh, that's wonderful. It's really good. But then when I get deeper into that, then I saw that which bases they use, or which kind of data they use for the cover crop selection. And that is a little kind of, I'll explain it. So here, so where we get all these weather and soil data and so on, if you're interested, and later on you go to the cover crops, and cover crops, it kind of give you, ask you to provide 3 main goals. So we know that we have multiple goals. Later on, I'm going to explain those. But recently, we have many presentations from myself, the BC Living Lab, and all other groups, even from the BC Ag Department, about the goals of cover cropping. And for example, here we choose nitrogen source. We want to have a cover crop to provide some nitrogen to the main crop. Soil builder, and also soil builder means we want to improve the soil health. We want to provide some carbon sequestration, and so on. And also we want it to kind of hold the soil so you have less erosion. So you have a soil builder, means we want to improve the condition of the soil with something that has the roots that quite a bit of root biomass that can kind of like build your soil in terms of the organic matter and others. And also weed fighter. We want a cover crop that compete with the weed, establish well, suppress the weeds, so we can get a good kind of the most benefits from that cover crop. And then we have these 4 different numbers, 5 different numbers, is if your cover crop is that you selected, or the model is selected for you, is the best, then it has number 4. If it is very good, is number 3, and then so on until 0, that is really poor, which means this is not a suitable cover crop. And then you see 2 colors here, a green color, which means the period of time that you can establish this cover crop in their condition out east. And then the kind of orange color that shows that, oh, there is chance of freezing, it's risky. The establishment is risky during this period. So I just put this, for example, I put these 3 goals, and then I run the model. And this is not for the vineyard. It didn't say for which crop. It in general cover cropping. And then over time, we find out that cover cropping in the perennial horticultural crops is very different than cover cropping in the field crops or other crops that has open field. So totally 2 different concepts. But one of the disadvantage of these models is that they didn't distinguish between these different crops, and usually they gave you a general idea. And where this general idea came, it came from the characteristics of the species. For example, in the literature we have for the red clover, this is the plant that's growing in this kind of zone, in this kind of moisture. The best seeding rate is this range, and it's better planting time is this and that. So it's all in the literature based on the species, not based on the location, not based on the climate, not any of the other biotic, abiotic factor. It hasn't been considered. It's just about red clover. So you look at that, you see that, okay, first choice, if we want to have these 3 goals in order, is the clover. And then the first number is really good in the nitrogen source. It is a good soil builder, and fighting the weeds, it is average, is moderate. And then you have sweet clover, and looking at these lists, you see quite a bit of those are annual crops, and is a mix of annual and perennial, and didn't distinguish between the annual and perennial. You put everything in the same basket and then compare those, whereas we know that perennial and annuals are very different. And perennials in the first year, they're establishing more, they investing in the root development, so you don't get much above ground. And the second year is that what they do more grow above ground, and you see the biomass and you see the establishment. So it didn't distinguish between those, although visually very appealing, really nice, easy to work with. At the end, the results is very general. So I'm not saying it's not useful, it's very useful, but you gotta use it with caution because it didn't consider the soil, then consider the site specific, the biotic stresses, anything. So the second reference, which is Midwest Cover Crop Council, you go to their website and they have the cover crop decision tool. Of course, as the name says, it is for the Midwest. And it's more for the field crops. It developed in the Southern Ontario, in the US and in the Midwest, and their focus is corn, soybean, wheat, but they have other crops included in that. So this tool is much older than the first tool that I showed you. A little bit visually less appealing, but it is quite a bit of research went into that, and quite a bit of people and investment into this. So it's been around for many years, as long as I remember, like I would say at least like 10 years, 10, 15 years. So with this one, you can choose the location, and then you can choose your goals. Again, nitrogen source, soil builder, weed fighter, and then you can run the model. You can include a few other information, and then you run the model, and the model basically will tell you which period of time is good for establishing, which period of time is risky if you seed it, and then what is the range of goal fulfillment from 0 is the worst to 4. And then you have these also extra information about frost seeding. And we know that frost seeding is again another tool that can help you to seed the cover crop when there is no weeds and when there is these freeze and thaw periods of the year earlier in the spring. And that will help that you just broadcast your seed, and freeze and thaw will kind of move your seed down into the soil, and then you're going to have very early establishment of the cover crop. But it doesn't work for all the cover crops. So you see some of those 3 here in the picture: barley, spring wheat, and the red clover. They pretty suitable for the frost seeding. And then the period of time, very useful. And then again, the same story. For ranking these cover crops, there is no real data, field data, or really limited field data. And it is not for the perennial horticultural crop, definitely. So a useful tool, again, some limitations. And the third one, which is a little bit closer to us, it developed in US, is Northeast Cover Crop Council. And again, visually really nice. It has the same, so most of those you see have the same kind of format. This one, you can put your location, which zone is your location, and a little bit about site conditions and the goals. But majority of the selection is based on the cover crop species criteria and your goals. So those two together created this. Again, is not for the vineyards or orchards, is very general. And you see that with the same 3 goals that we had previously. Here it gave us the crimson clover, and it gave us the red clover, rye, and then balsamic clover. Again, perennial and annual, they're mixed. So it's really hard to know which one is the best. It just gives you a general idea of these cover crops probably work, and it give you more like nitrogen. And then, so crimson clover, for example, I have experience with the crimson clover growing in 3 sites here, and it is very sensitive to drought. So for our condition, our summer is really dry. Even with the overhead, you need relatively frequent irrigation twice per week, at least all season. And for that reason, I think crimson clover, although established pretty good, it competes with the weeds. It looks really nice, but huge amount of water is needed. And for our region with the irrigated vineyards, it probably not, I would not choose it as the best, which this model choose it for as the best, but this is not, remember that this is not for vineyard and orchard. So here, another list of other tools that you can try those and see how they work and how they look. So what I see is that there is a gap. There is nothing for the perennial horticultural crops, nothing for the vineyards, irrigated vineyards, nothing even for the non-irrigated vineyards in a humid environment, and definitely not for the orchards. So this is an opportunity for us, and this is the work that we started from 5 years ago. Start selection of the cover crops for the semi-arid irrigated vineyards. And we tested quite a bit of cover crops in the region, and I'm going to explain it later. But going through reviewing all these web-based tools for cover crop selections, we see that there's 3 major limitations on these web-based tools for cover crop selection. The emphasis of those was on the visual appealing. So it's really nice. When you go through it, you basically trust it. And it says, oh, there is a knowledge behind it, and this is the best choice that it gives me. But technically, the base is very weak. It's more like visual, and is based on only cover crop species. And we know that many other aspects are important. Vineyard management, your soil, your environment, microclimate that you have, all these extremely important in success of a cover crop versus the other one. So it's not only the criteria that the cover crop has in general and is available in the literature. So we say primarily designed for a wide range of crops, and not necessarily for vineyard and orchard, with a focus on the annual crops, and criteria are not, some of these criteria are not applicable for the perennial horticultural crops. And I always said that, I'll repeat it. So necessarily high biomass is not a good criteria for the vineyard and orchards, because that's gonna hugely increase your workload and labor. You have to go and mow it very often. So we need a cover crop that it doesn't grow huge amount of biomass. It produces biomass, is established well, but is not excessive, which is in the field crop. As much as it produces, fine. There's no problem with that, and that's a positive criteria. But for us is how the percentage coverage is important. The biomass, you need to be moderate and manageable. If you plant it under vine, you don't want even to go and mow it. You want something that just grow enough and stay on the surface of the soil. So you see that some of these criteria that the models work with and the selection tools is not ideal for the vineyards. And then recommendations are largely driven from the general cover crop literature and lack the region-specific research data. Site-specific conditions, management practices are often overlooked. So major shortcomings in these models. We had an effort in BC through the BC Department of Agriculture past couple of years, and they developed this table. And this is again not for the vineyard and orchard, it's just in general. The characteristics of the cover crop, they review the literature, they put together this table, and you can access it through the link, or you can just search the British Columbia Department of Agriculture cover crop data, and it gives you this table, as well as it gives you some fact sheets about each of these cover crops. Let's say you're interested in the spring oak, or you're interested in the field pea. You can just open, there is a nice fact sheet that you can read the information about it if you're curious to know how the field pea work or how these grow, what is the growth habit, what is the drought tolerance, what is the cold hardiness, is it annual, perennial, all this information. So it is useful. Still, there is no web-based tool for selecting that, and it's not specific to the vineyards. When we're looking at the vineyards, there's 6 categories to me, based on experience and literature, and the work that we did in the past 6-7 years. 6 major function that we're expecting from cover crops in the vineyards. One is the productivity and fruit quality. So we want a cover crop that it's either improve the yield or it doesn't reduce the yield. So we don't want something that hugely compete with the grape, except if you're in a humid environment or you are at the vigorous site, then you would like a cover crop to compete with the main crop. Otherwise, you don't want to add the competition, and you want to improve fruit quality when you cover cropping. You want to improve your soil health. Second category is the soil chemical and biological. So soil health can include carbon sequestration, soil fertility, biological nitrogen fixation. And you would also like to reduce the nutrient losses. So this is another function. And from person to person and location to location, vineyard to vineyard, some of these criteria might be more important for you and some might be less important for you. Another criteria, group 3, category 3 is soil physical. So we need to reduce compaction is a function, erosion and dust reducing is another, and soil moisture and temperature regulating. And during the past few years, we had sensors in the different vineyards, in different cover crops, and we showed that the soil moisture and temperature are buffered by the cover crops. And we see the temperature of the soil, the differences, at least like 3 to 5 degree differences in the soil. So huge. And this is for the extreme event. You see that you have that buffering in the soil that can moderate the temperature and moisture in the soil during the summer, especially. We see the visual and ecological benefits. So enhance the aesthetic, enhance the biodiversity. There are also the biological control and water regulations. So pest and disease pressure reducing, biofumigation, that we know that it's really important for the soil-borne diseases. And pests such as nematodes, and suppressing the weeds and regulating the vine grow and reduce the vigor, which I've seen more of that in the West because of the humid environment. You see the grapes are really vigorous, and sometimes they plant a cover crop that can compete and reduce the vigor. And then at the end, some people are interested in the revenue generation. So use it as a feed or different purposes, even selling the products. So during past several years, we tested 37 cover crop species. We tested those either in the greenhouse or in the field, or both in the greenhouse and in the field. So a wide range of grasses. Focus was on the drought tolerance, and a wide range of legumes, a wide range of brassica and forbs. And we look at those in the field. We see how they react, how they establish. We collected all the data on those ones, biomass, percentage coverage during the growing season, effect even on the soil microbiome, and carbon and nitrogen, of course. So huge data set that we have, which is extremely valuable, and data belongs to the BC Wine Grape and Canada. Some of the pictures, I have many pictures. If you're interested in any of these cover crops to see how it looked like in the field or in the greenhouse, I can share those pictures with you. But this is our more recent. This spring, we seeded 5 vineyards, 3 in the south, in the Oliver and Osoyoos area, and 2 more northern area of Okanagan Valley in West Kelowna and Kelowna. And this is a picture from the St. Hubertson Vineyard when we planted. We planted end of April. And this is a picture like a couple of weeks after. This is a more recent picture, like a few weeks ago, mid-July. Same vineyard, same place. And then we have, this is a picture of the spring triticale and oats. So I used those spring triticale and oats as the nurse crop to help the main cover crop to establish well. And then I used 3 different groups of cover crops in this vineyard. One is the wheatgrass, extremely drought tolerance, and there are different type of wheatgrass that we tested in this experiment. But it's very difficult to establish it because it's grown really slow. So wheatgrass, one of the choices. Italian ryegrass, again, a grass, drought tolerance, not as much as the wheatgrass, but it grows fast and is established better. And we saw that there's better establishment in the Italian ryegrass than the wheatgrass. They also call it annual ryegrass, but it can stay more than a year. And we have red and white clover mixture. So again, a clover mixture. So I wanted to compare a drought-tolerant grass versus a less drought-tolerant and fast-growing grass and a legume, and then see how these 3 reacting. And I had the triticale and oats as the nurse crop, and you see in the left triticale, very distinct color, and in the right you see the oats. And usually we mow those before the seeds get hard and drop. We also, this year, we tried some of the species that are not as common, like sainfoin, which is a legume. And you see that here in the little straw, we planted that as well as in the diamondback that was south. And you see the really nice legume, very spindly when it's established. So it's not very competitive with the weeds. You see the plots are pretty weedy, but it's very drought tolerant in terms of, so it's much more drought tolerant than the clovers. And between the clovers, we have the white clover is more drought tolerant than the red clover. Red clover works really good in the eastern provinces and no irrigation, more like humid environment. White clover, it doesn't need as much water. So our aim is that we don't need to irrigate more than once per week. So this is kind of like my hypothetic threshold, that I don't want a cover crop in our vineyard here that needed more than once irrigation per week, especially after the full bloom to the horizon. So earlier on in the season, we can irrigate it a little bit more until established, the roots established, the plant established, and then later reduce it to from 2 irrigation per week to 1 irrigation. This is again a couple of new, to me, species that we tried here. The left side, you see the Camelina in the Diamondback down in the Oliver, and established relatively good and very sandy soil, as you see. And on the right, we had white mustard, again established really good. But you got to be careful. You're going to mow it early so it doesn't go to the seed and scatter. So we collected quite a bit of data, different characteristics of these cover crops in the field. And I mentioned 37 species. And then we tried to use a modeling base rather than just relying on the information on the literature for these to use the selection tool. We're relying on 2 different models and our data. And the 2 models, I'm not going to go deep into those, but I'm just going to mention first, we combine the 2 models. One is AHP and the other one is Topsis. We use these 2 in combination to rank the cover crops there from the best to the least suitable for the vineyard based on the condition of the vineyard. And so why are we using these models? Because selecting cover crops have multiple criteria, like 3, 4, 5, 10 really important criteria for the vineyards. And then some are better in the criteria 2, some they're better criteria 1, some better criteria 10. how can we evaluate those to see, okay, which one is the best for our condition? So these models, they help us to do the best when we have multiple criteria and multiple cover crops. It will help us to choose the best. And also we divided the perennial and annuals. Yeah, so again, they're kind of like a process. I just wanted to show you that there is a base for the models. It's not just like just selecting, just like ranking that you do in the Excel or so. This is a little more complicated process. So we first determine the criteria and sub-criteria. So we call it hierarchy. And then we calculate weight for each criteria to see how important is each criteria. Some criteria are more important. They're not all equally weighed. And then we use the topsis to select. So when we have weight for them and multiple of those, then we do the selection. And then we have the final rank. And here is an example of the hierarchy. So we have these 3 levels of the hierarchy. One is the seed-related criteria, one is the physiological related, and one is the biotic and abiotic stresses criteria. Again, I'm not going to go deep into that. And this is how we gave them weight. So each criteria have a certain weight. So we have the physiological related criteria we choose versus the biotic, abiotic stresses, we give them weight. And also we look into the pest, we look at the invasive, how invasive they could be. We look at the how can they get tall into the fruiting zone, and all these different criteria. And then when we have these weights here, then we run it by the topsis, and topsis will give us the final data. And this is an example. So a very simple example, we have 2 perennial cover crops. One is Crescendo Ladino clover and one is buffalo grass under vine. So again, we separated perennial, annual, and we separated under vine versus the alleyway, and then we run those. Just want to be cautious of time. Okay, I have a little bit more time. So these 2, we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 criteria for them. And then we weigh these criteria and we run it by topsis, and the topsis will give us an index that called PI. And then based on the number of the PI, the larger numbers are on top, the lower numbers. So the larger the PI, the better cover crop, and observations also support that Ladino white clover was much better than the buffalo grass in terms of multiple criteria. It's not one criteria, multiple criteria. So rank 1, rank 2. So this website, so we did this model, developing model, finding the best model, the combination of the 2 models for selections. And now we're kind of moving to the next level using our new data for validation and developing a web-based tool. So desirable web-based tool information are general information of the tool, we have web page, logging and sign up, and the dashboard would include the map tools, locate me, soil series, I think is useful, land use, water and weather, the weather and irrigation data. And then we have a cover crop tool. So this is how the website is going to look like. And the main part is that although you can get the soil series, you can get the land use, and you can get the weather, but the main objective is the cover crop selection tool. And there are these multiple kind of phases when we want to develop a web-based tool. So phase 1, we usually do the planning, we define the requirement, we design a prototype and prototyping, and then we move to the phase 2, which is web application development. And in that one, we do the software development. And the third phase is testing, deployment, and then later on, we kind of do the operations and the troubleshooting and maintenance. So these are the different steps that we have in order to develop the web-based tool. sometimes it seems very simple. You say, oh, we have a website, and then you can do things in the website, but there's quite a bit of like other work that went into this to generate a nice website, especially if you want to run the model in the same website and do the selections and have it visually presented. So the future vision that we have, we want to have a very streamlined and intuitive interface. Down the road, when we have the website, then we can think about developing an app that can go on the cell phones. And then same concept from the web, when we develop the web-based tool, is very easy to convert it into an app. And then we're thinking about, we can add in the same web-based tool, we can include the intelligent selection of the cover crops with the mixtures, because mixtures is always challenging and you don't see mixtures in any of these web-based tools, but we can look into the mixtures. We can integrate the features for the humid vineyards. We can expand the tool usability for the orchards, tree fruit orchards. And then we can also look at the irrigation and recommendations for the irrigation. So there's quite a bit of potential to kind of add the usability of this tool in the future. So this is what we comment. We had many collaborators from the industry, of course, BC Wine Grape, and CGCN, our main industry collaborators, but the Vineyards, Covert, Kalala, Leviathan, Andrew Pillar, the Diamondback Vineyards, Mission Hill or Sebastian Farm, Little Straw, and St. Hubertson. Collaboration with these industry partners extremely important for getting these data and testing the cover crops. And many researchers, we have quite a bit of research support from many researchers from UBC, as well as, I'm not reading the names because many of them, UBC, Ag Canada, UBC Okanagan. We got technical support, multiple people, especially from our station that helps, and many students that they spend time in the hot summers to do the work, to collect the data, to process the samples. We really appreciate that support. And with that, I also wanted to talk about a tour of cover crops in the vineyard that I planned for the next week. We have 21st of August. We're going to 2 vineyards in the north. First, we're starting with the St. Hubertus in Kelowna, and then we go to the West Kelowna Little Straw Vineyards. And it started at 9 o'clock. If you're interested, please send me an email and I'll put your name in the list and communicate with you. And the second day is on Thursday, 22nd of August. We visit the 3 vineyards in the south, Leviathan, Diamondback, as well as the Sebastian Farm. And we're gonna start from the Sebastian Farm in Oliver. I'll share the address and information with you, and then we visit the Diamondback, and then we end at the Leviathan. We start at 9 o'clock. We're hoping to finish by 12, so it would be a 3 hours tour. You interested? Send me an email, and I'll put your name in the list, and I'm gonna be in touch with you. With that, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, we have, I think, time for, yes, we have quite a bit of time for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mehdi. Yeah, I'm excited about the tool. I can't wait till it's up and running. We had a bit of discussion before you started about the Wine Grape Council hosting the tool. So hopefully we can move that forward. So when do you hope to have it up and running?
So initially we had the plan. So the project that we approved project we have for cover crop selection is supposed to start from last year and go for 5 years. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking, with the interest that is in the cover crop and different groups working on that, initially I wanted to spread it over 4 years, but then I thought if we wait too long, maybe another group, they're gonna deploy something that is same as the ones that are exist for the other crops with no base and regional data and everything else, and it kind of like ruin what we're trying to do. So we want to be the first.
Right.
That is really important. So I try to kind of make it a little bit like more focus on that in this year and next year. But I'm hoping if the budget is get approved, because I want to move the budget from the 4th year and 5th year into the 3rd year and 4th year.
Right.
If we can do that, then by the end of next year, we're going to have the website. We're going to launch the website. And then the year after, we do the troubleshooting and we do the maintenance and everything else.
Okay, and so then, and it will be designed so that it can be, as you get more information.
Yes,
right?
can be added. Absolutely. Yeah, it
Yeah.
has the flexibility. As we're getting more data, we're adding more data, and we need to think about the maintenance over time. So during the term of the projects, I'm gonna be supplying the kind of supporting the cost and maintenance, everything else. After that, we need to have a plan that BC Wine Grape hopefully is going to take it on, and it's not going to be expensive. So just the initial development is more expensive, which we have some funding to do that.
Right. I have a question from James. Is micro clover something that was ever considered for a trial?
Yes. So micro clover or subterranean clover, these are the clover that they grow really slow, relatively drought tolerance. One issue, and I tried it in Ontario, I haven't tried it here, is to find the seed and the cost of the seed. So very expensive, very hard to find, very, very expensive, and hard to establish because it grows really slow. So due to those things, I really didn't go after it because nobody afford to spend tons of money on just one bag of and this is the limitation that we have. If there is a cover crop that is extremely expensive, really, we don't really consider that, or finding the seeds is impossible. Maybe it's a native species. It's basically, there is no way to find the seeds. So these are the things that we consider. But in the past, I tried it in some vineyards in Ontario, and really hard to establish. So you get very poor establishment, even with the care and right planting and right timing and everything else, still is very poor.
Lisa says they have micro clover.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, definitely. I would encourage trying that. I would encourage really trying that. Something I noticed, so we tried different vineyards with different soil texture. The vineyards with very sandy soil, they don't do as good with the clover because clover really like clay and more silt, and it would like more moisture. But vineyards that had more silt, they did really good. And I had a couple of examples in West Kelowna and Kelowna. And if you come to the tour, I will show you. The clover, it does really good when you have a little bit of more heavier soil texture or medium soil texture, more loamy rather than having loamy sand. So sandy loam, much better than the loamy sand.
Do you have any near meta bench test sites? I didn't know.
I don't know. I don't have. So we wanted to have as many as we can, and I send requests to many vineyards, but consider that it's very hard to manage the data collection and the drive between the sites, and the cost is really limiting for us. So I try to do as many as I can and in different regions and cover the soil type and cover the microclimate a little bit as much as I could.
Well, and it requires irrigation, right?
Irrigation.
You have to be able
overhead irrigation was a must. We need to have overhead irrigation to establish the cover. Otherwise, we could.
Does it have to be overhead, or is there like a microjet option?
I tried the microjet, and it is encouraged the powdery mildew, unfortunately. So everyone almost agreed that the overhead, it does better than the under canopy microjets. And
then, so you talked about once a week watering, like, is that seems excessive for the vines, right? In terms of, I imagine it's not a long set, but in terms of moisture content in the surrounding environment, right?
Yeah, and you know, we are in a dry environment, and each irrigation cycle is 3 hours. So it's not going to create a massive amount of moisture in there. So and it's even for vines is not really deep soil, like wet saturating the whole soil. Is not, it's just like the surface soil in order to keep the cover crop going. And cover crop, it create even, we have seen observations that some cover crop even reduce the powdery mildew when you have a mix of cover crops. It's sometimes not only, it might have a little bit extra moisture, but it suppress the powdery mildew. So for the reasons that we can discuss. Yeah.
That's definitely worth investigating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know from Hans's vineyard, right, that he and he has a protocol for irrigating up to a certain point, like, you know, when a certain crop goes to seed, and then cut it out, right?
Yeah.
So
we definitely can reduce it towards the end of the season, which is important, like just before horizon. Definitely we can. So earlier in the season is important because we want to establish the cover crop. When the roots are established, we definitely can cut down on the, and in this experiment, our focus was on the drought tolerant species. So we have the species that they can withstand some stress. And I had in one of these vineyards that we're working with, the irrigation, it was like really less than a week. And we still have even clover survive, and it didn't provide as much biomass, but it survived and is growing. So and I'm hopeful that when it's get in towards the fall and it cool down a little bit more moisture, then they're gonna, for the September, October, November, we're gonna get a really good establishment and biomass from these plants. So we want something that during the summer, it doesn't die. We don't want it to produce a massive biomass, as long as we can withstand some drought and then come back again. That is really, I think, useful.
So will the tool be expandable to include things like powdery mildew resistance and other pests? Because I know,
and of course,
yeah.
It's just like in the design and the server that we use, as well as the web tool that we use, they should accommodate, because depends on how much or which kind of selection you have, they can accommodate certain number of people. So the load, they call it. So if we kind of design for the load of 200 people, if we were going to go more that, then we have to change that. We have to get a different subscription, but you can have whatever. So the more that you add to that website, then a more advanced kind of web platform you need.
Right. Lisa's given a bit more information about the white clover. They have lots in stock, 1 pound, 5 pound bags, or bigger if needed. Roughly double the cost of white clover.
Yeah, I like white clover. It works pretty good, especially in the alleyways. It works really good. We had good success, as well as we had very good success with the brassica. So the tillage radish or orchid radish, it grow really good. I always planted that in the spring. And then by the time you get to the midsummer, like July, it bolts. So it goes to the flower. So it doesn't produce a big kind of root that's what we're hoping to create, and then break the compaction. This year, I'm going to do it, plant it in end of August, and then see how that's going to work. So, and I think that would be where we get more root than the tops. As we get into the cool weather, it's just get better.
And
so
what's the current thinking on brassicas and pest resistance and pest control, right?
So there's some data about kind of, if you pulverize it and mix it with the soil and so on, then there might be some biofumigation effect. You just have to do it at the right time. It has to be the right biomass and that kind of things. So some information came from the US, from Washington, that they tried it in the cover cropping in different orchards. still there is, I think, no consensus on how that's going to react. So from brassica to the other brassica, it's different. But with the tillage radish, I like it because it's brassica, but it's also, it has that taproot that breaks the compaction. And we see a lot of compaction in the alleyways. So that is something that can probably help with reducing the compaction. And I'm going to do the measurement on the compaction this year. So we're going to figure it out.
Another comment from Lisa. She says she has quite a few growers seeding fall rye with tillage radish and purple top turnip as fall applications.
Yes.
Let's follow up and chat. I'm surprised you guys aren't chatting anyway.
Yeah, no, we have experience with those, and it works really good with the fall. So we have these a strategy to do fall plantation for some of the cover crops. So those are like winter cover crops, and we have the spring cover crops that goes into the summer. So these are two different categories of the cover crops.
Right. I'd like to point out that I noticed a lot of the vineyards that you have been working with also are certified sustainable vineyards. So that makes sense to me. And yeah, that's really good to see. So the few of you that are on the call, tell your friends about the presentation. It was super interesting. It will be published on the website right away. And also Kate mentioned to me, so the government has very specific protocol for publishing presentations of their scientists. And so we've taken some of the recordings down to sort of jump through those hoops, but we'll get that cleaned up and put them back on the website. So if you're missing anything, just stay tuned and hold on. But I noticed that this one's approved by His Majesty the King, so that's really good. If you have any questions for Mehdi, Kate will follow up with his contact information, and also tell your friends about the vineyard tour coming up next week. It sounds really, really interesting, and there's nothing like seeing it in real life, right? And also, I think that people can still be part of the project.
Yeah.
You're still taking vineyard sites as part of the project, right? Yeah. So that's really cool. Our September third Thursday is the 19th. The topic is to be confirmed, so Kate will send that out when we have it nailed down. And any other housekeeping business, Kate? Got 4 minutes.
No, I think we're good. Thanks for attending. And thanks, Mehdi.
Any last words, Mehdi?
No, I really appreciate the support from the BC Wine Grape. It's really a pleasure to work with you guys. And I think I'm very impressed with the vineyards, very progressive in the cover crops, and many of the growers, they tried themselves, they have lots of experience. So something that we will, as part of this modeling, is going to do is that to consult, have a team of experts, we call it, and bring the growers that has experience with the cover crops and kind of run the ideas and the model by them, and include their expertise and knowledge into the model. So
awesome.
that is another,
Yeah, that'll be really good. It's exciting work. Thanks, Mehdi.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you next month.
Bye.
Enjoy the summer.
You too.